Hey, I'm Aaron from GameEnthus.com. I'm going to talk to you today about Sea Salt and Paper. Sea Salt and Paper is a 2 to 4 player card game, plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. Sea Salt and Paper was designed by Bruno Cathala, the name might ring a bell, and Theo, Riviere, with art from Lucian, Derainne, and Pierre-Yves, Gallard. And this is full disclosure, this copy of the game was provided to me by the publisher, who is Pandasaurus Games, in conjunction with Bombyx. There's no particular motivation for why you are collecting the folded paper that you are, but you want points and you want to win, which is the object of most games. Let's go over what's in the box for Sea Salt and Paper and how it plays. Playing Sea Salt and Paper effectively comes down to playing the right cards at the right time. And I know that could be said for a lot of games, honestly. This is the actual setup for the game. You have the deck, and you'll put out 2 different cards. The areas flanking the setup are for demonstrative purposes. Cards have a variety of effects. For the anchor cards, if you have one of them, it's worth 0. If you have both of them, it's worth 5 points. Keep in mind there's only these 2, so that's it. And then this card here makes every anchor worth 3 points. So if you happen to have all 3 of these cards, that's 11 points. You get 5 points if you have each of the 2, and then 3 points each. So that'd be 6 plus 5, 11. So that's how the anchor cards work. Like I said, there's only 2 of them in the bottom right corner of every single card. For example, this octopus is worth, in the bottom right of every single card, you have the quantity of them. Sorry, I don't have autofocus on, but I think you can make out the 5 in the lower right corner. So yeah, that means there's 5 of that type of card. Not necessarily color, just type. Down to the penguins here, there's only 3 total. And if you have one of them, you get 1 point. Sorry, 2, you get 3 points. And if you have all 3 of them, you get 5 points. And then this card lets you score 2 points per penguin. These 2 cards don't score at all by themselves. They only score if you have the corresponding card. And for the octopus I just showed you, there's 5 of them total in the deck. If you see, if you have 1, that's worth nothing. And if you have up to 5, it's worth 12 points. I think I might have had 4 at one point and got 9 points. But yeah, it's kind of a tall order. The shell works very similarly to the octopi or octopus cards. Yeah, they just happen to go from 0 to 10. The mermaids are interesting because the mermaids allow you to score what's called a color bonus. I'll get into that, more about that in just a second. Mermaids effectively mean, let's say these are the cards in your hand or that you laid out, whichever. I'll get into that in a moment. If you happen to have a mermaid card to go with it, then if this dark blue is the most plentiful color you have, then this card is worth 2 points because the most plentiful color you have is blue, and you have 2 of them, it's worth 2 points. So mermaids are typically worth the color bonus of the most plentiful card that you have in your hand or out in front of you. If you happen to collect all 4 mermaids, which I've almost done before, but not quite, you just win the whole game. Normally the game is played up to X number of points. And a 2-player game, whoever hits 40 points first wins. 3-player game, 35 points first wins. And then in a 4-player game, whoever hits 30 points first wins the game. These cards don't have actions, like the mermaid score at the end of the round. All these cards are just basically points, with the exception of having all 4. You just win it automatically. But these cards are just basically built on points. The cards over here are about points as well, but a little bit differently. The cards over here primarily work in pairs. For example, the shark and the swimmer cards, which are going to be up here. So these cards are a pair. So if you have both of these cards in your hand, they're worth a point. With little dotted outlines on the cards just mean what makes the pair. So for the shark, it needs a swimmer, and the swimmer, for whatever reason, needs a shark. Don't ask me why. Having both of these cards in your hand is worth 1 point. That's why they have 1 point. If you have the pair, it's worth a point. If it's in your hand at the end of the round, worth a point. If you play them together in front of you on your turn, let's say you play the shark and the swimmer, you then get to choose one of your opponents and steal 1 card from them randomly, and then put that card into your hand. The boats also, similar to the shark and swimmer, work as a pair. So if you have 2 boats, you have a pair. They are worth 1 point in your hand or if you play them. So if you play them as a pair in front of you, you get to take an entirely extra turn right then. So if you play both of these cards, you get to look through one of these discard piles, just one, and then take any card out of it. Try to keep whatever discard pile you pick in order. You just kind of go through it in the order it's in, take the card out you want, put it back the way you got it, with the exception of the card you just took, and then you put it back. The fish also work as a pair. You have two of them in your hand, it's worth a point. If you play them, they're worth a point. So, playing the fish, what they allow you to do is to take the top card from the deck and put it into your hand. That's how the fish power works. These two cards, of which there's one each, so not a lot of these. This card gives you 1 point for every boat you have in your hand or played. This card gives you 1 point for every fish you have in your hand or that you played in front of you. Okay, so how does a turn work? Like I said, this is the setup, and no one actually starts off with any cards in their hand. So on your turn, you're able to do one of a couple of things. You can either take two cards from the top of the deck, look at them, choose one of them. Let's say I chose to keep the fish. And then you would choose one of the discard piles to discard one of the cards to. If you have cards that can be played, so let's say I had, let's say my hand looked like this. Okay, after I chose to keep the fish. So I already have 1 point period because I have a duo, a pair of fish. Whether I play them or not, they're still worth a point because I have the pair. After you've selected a card, you're able to play any duo card you have and take that action. So by playing this pair of fish, the fish allow you to take an additional card from the top of the deck. So the point of the game is to get the most points and win, but you want to win the round. Like, why wouldn't you? So in addition to having the option of drawing two cards, picking one, discarding the other main action that you'll take on your turn is to just pick up one of the cards from one of the discard piles. So you just pick one card, it goes into your hand, and then your turn will play out as normal, meaning if you have a pair or duo of cards you can play together, you can do so for however many you have, or just picking up that one card from one of the discard piles could completely end your turn. So one of the interesting things about Sea Salt and Paper is what triggers the end of a round. Once you hit 7 points, you have a couple of options that you'll see here. Earning those 7 points allows you on your turn to just say stop. And if you say stop, everyone immediately, including you, counts up all the points they have between the cards they played on the table and the cards remaining in their hands. And whoever has the most points wins that round, gets the points, and keeps a running tally. Just on a piece of paper, just tally up what everybody's score is. You're all playing to a certain score based on the player count, or whatever your preference happens to be. Players also have the option of just saying last chance. At that point, they reveal their entire hand and show what their score is. Let's say they had 9. At that point, everybody else gets one more turn to try to beat 9. If you say last chance, let's say you had 9, and you end up having the highest score, you would get your score, your 9, plus you would get your color bonus. Your color bonus is not based on having a mermaid. Your color bonus is just based on whatever most plentiful color card you have between the cards in your hand and the ones you played on the table. So you had 4 greens. Even if your opponents had tied you, as long as they didn't exceed your score, all they would get is their color bonus. Not based on the mermaid, just they would get, in the same way you got the bonus, all they're getting is the bonus. So if one of your opponents had 4 gray cards, their score for that round would be 4. So that's the risk reward. If you say last chance and you end up beating everybody's score, you get even more points. And then they would just get their color bonus. If you lose, all you get is your color bonus. Everybody else just gets the pure points that they scored between their hands and what they played. At the end of the round, the player who's sitting to the left of the player who triggered the end of the round by saying stop or last chance will be the first player to go in the subsequent round. While the base game Sea Salt and Paper came out in 2022, there was an expansion released in 2023 called Sea Salt and Paper Extra Salt. And this is the package it came in. Why I kept it, I don't know. I just folded it up and tucked it into the box because I'm that person. Extra Salt adds a couple of cards. Okay, so one of the cards that the Extra Salt expansion adds is the Sea Star, or Starfish, whichever you want to call it. What this one does is it allows you to use it with a duo. These are duo cards. I kept saying pair, but a duo. So if you add the Sea Star, mind you, this is stuff that's in your hand. So if I have, let's say, these 2 boats in my hand and I have the Sea Star and I play them, I cannot do the power that the duo would allow me to do. So for the boat, it allows me to take a whole nother turn. But I do get 2 points extra for putting it with the sea star or the starfish, in which it'd be called a trio. So now, instead of getting 1 point for just these two alone, I would get 3 points. So 1 point for the duo, and then 2 points for coupling it to make it a trio with the sea star. Up next in the expansion is the seahorse, which you can couple with one of the collector cards. So let's say I coupled it with the shell. Now I could count this as having two of them. The seahorse effectively is like a wild collector. So with the seahorse, I can now pretend as if I have 2 of these. But you cannot go over the maximum. So let's say I had all 5 of these shells, which is 10 points, which is a lot and kind of hard to do. You can't put it with the seahorse and then say, oh, I have 6 and then make up a number. You can't go above the maximum that that type of card has. Next, we have the lobster card. And the lobster, there's only 1 of them in the expansion, and it works with the crab cards. You get a point for it, like you would if you have 2 crabs, but now it's just a point for having a crab and a lobster. And what it allows you to do is you can take the first 5 cards from the deck, take the one you want, and then shuffle the other 4 cards back into the deck and place it back. This card is interesting because it works very similarly to the boat and fish cards here, in which you get 1 point per crab that you have, be it in your hand or the ones you played in front of you. You just get 1 point per crab that you have. Okay, last but certainly not least, you have the jellyfish card. And the jellyfish card gets paired with the swimmer, much like the shark does. But playing it means that every one of your opponents is essentially bitten or shocked, I guess, the lightning bolt there, by the jellyfish, and on their turn, they're only able to take the top card from the deck and they can't play any cards. So it's kind of like they've been bitten, they're shocked. I mean, if you've been bitten by a jellyfish, it definitely will slow you down a bit. And those are all the cards in the Sea Salt and Paper Extra Salt expansion. Sea Salt and Paper also utilizes the ColorADD System, which is something to help mitigate color perception issues. So people who can't recognize what the colors are or what they might be, that's a system that can be used in order to mitigate that issue. So now we get to my actual thoughts on Sea Salt and Paper. I really like Sea Salt and Paper. I played a ton of this game. When I first started playing it, I had this idea that people winning would just always run away with the win, and there was no real catch-up mechanic. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that that is not true at all. If someone is winning, they are winning. They have more points, what have you, but it doesn't mean the game is over. I enjoy the game. I like the strategy of figuring out, based on the quantity of cards that you know have come out versus what you have, whether it makes sense to draw 2 cards for another shell or an octopi card, or does it make sense to just get 7 and say stop and just get your points. Hopefully assuming that your opponents don't have that many more points than you do, which you often can't tell. Some people, when they first start playing the game, because they're not familiar with it, they might not be playing as many duos as someone who is a little bit more experienced. But also, someone more experienced might hold on to those duos because they're still with a point in your hand, which also leaves less information for your opponents to use potentially to their advantage or against you, which could be one and the same thing. But no, I really enjoy Sea Salt and Paper. I thought it was a really fun game. I've taught it to my family. They've enjoyed it, beating the crap out of me. So, good times. But no, I guess my only complaint about the game would just be the cards it's a good card stock. It's a good quality card. But they are a little bit stiff, but that just means they'll last longer. So shuffling isn't always the easiest thing to do, but they can be shuffled. It's not like it's impossible, but they're just a little bit stiffer than I guess what I'm used to, which might just mean that I'm used to just a cheaper card quality. So I'm not really a knock against it. It's just something I happen to notice. But I mean, I think aesthetically it's very pleasing to look at these cards. And in terms of the expansion, what it offers, I feel like it does add a good amount of value because there are cards in the expansion that make other cards worth more. Now you can score crabs. So now it's a card that you can score 1 point for each crab. You have the jellyfish. I feel like it just adds a little more strategy, a little more openness, and it blends in really well. So I would probably just play with the expansion by default from here on out. It requires you to explain a couple of more cards to people, but I think it's worth it. So those are my thoughts on Sea Salt and Paper. I say if you have a chance to pick it up or play it, you should probably do so. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe. and be blessed.